don't know if anybody's gonna stay at the problem.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Fancy seeing you here, Drew.
How about that? How you doing, Marquez?
I'm good.
Good. Looks like we've got everybody flowing in here.
Hey everyone. Hi, Drew. Hi, Tara.
Hello.
Hi.
It's a rare moment that Tara and I get to hang out together.
I know, I'm jealous.
We miss
How
you.
you doing, Tara? Long time no see.
Yeah.
Marquez, don't worry.
All right, I'm going to share my screen and get things rolling along here. Go on to presentation mode. All right, cool. All right, Kate, you want to take it away?
Absolutely. So welcome, everyone. You are in the office of the president of Breakout. So hopefully you are in the right place. And just to get us started, we'd like to start with introductions. So my name is Kate Copeland. I am a former MPI Connecticut River Valley president. I'm also a member of CMAC and a chapter facilitator. And my day job is that I'm assistant director of university events and conference services at the University of Connecticut. I'm actually going to turn it over to Tara next to introduce herself.
Sure. I'm Tara Liashenko. I'm the owner of the Link Event Professionals, a meeting and event planning firm based in St. Petersburg, Florida. I too am a facilitator with MPI. I've worked with almost all the chapters. And that's it. I'm on the CMAC right now.
Absolutely. And then I feel like everybody knows Drew, but Drew, would you like to introduce yourself?
I can do that if you haven't heard enough of me yet today. So I'm Drew Holmgreen. I'm the Chief Brand Officer here at MPI. I've been at MPI for a little bit over 5 years now. So my role, just so everybody understands, as Chief Brand Officer, I'm responsible for our chapters, events, marketing, membership, and media. And that means that in general, this role just kind of guides all of the outward-facing brand components of MPI. So anything where the brand really kind of shines through, that's the team that I manage.
So you're not busy at all, is what you're saying?
No.
All right, excellent. So today we're going to go through a few different items for you to kind of lay the groundwork of what it takes to be part of the office of the president. But we will leave ample time for questions. I know there's a lot of new information coming at all of you today. So we'll leave that. So save those questions, if you would, for the end of the presentation. So just looking at the agenda, we will go over roles and responsibilities. We will talk about laying the foundation for your upcoming term and for your board of directors. We will discuss chapter administration. We'll review chapter performance standards and the updated bylaws and policies. We'll talk about chapter operations and global support. We'll discuss financial oversight and the role of the MPI Foundation and how you'll interact with that. The media and communications piece, important deadlines that you should be aware of throughout your term, and then we will open it up to question and answer. So to start us off, I'm going to turn it back over to Tara.
Sure. Well, congratulations. You all are part of the Office of the President. This concept started probably a little over 8 years ago. And the reason that it was developed is because we wanted the Office of the President to function as a unit. So we didn't want to have a year that stops and starts on July 1. We wanted a cohesive unit that's diverse to oversee the leadership of the organization. We don't want 3 people that have the exact same personality or yes people. We want a balance that fits in there and that all 3 of you can support each other. You know, now more than ever, we're asked to do more with less and time is crazy tight. So this allows you to support each other in the event that, you know, somebody has a busy month or what have you. But as the president, you're kind of the ears of the organization. You should be listening to your members and also focusing on keeping your board strategic versus tactical. The immediate past president is responsible for nominations and governance. We recommend that committee in particular get voted in August and then remain active through the year, through the nominations process, your call for chairs. And then if you end up with an open position on the board at any point in time, new candidates should be vetted through the nominations process, just like you do in January. And then president-elect, this is your year to learn. You want to be paying attention, get to know your leaders and your committee chairs, attend as many meetings as you possibly can, and shadow your president, and soak it all in. All right, Kate.
Okay, so let's talk about what leadership responsibilities entail. What does board leadership look like? One of the most important concepts is that of servant leadership. So it's about remembering who you represent. And you not only serve your membership as the board of directors, but you as a member of the Office of the President also serve your board members. So you're there to make sure that they are, delivering, that they feel energized, that they are well taken care of and have all the tools and resources they need to help succeed on behalf of the members. So very important. How do you do that? One of my favorite kind of quotes from the business world is to provide freedom within a framework. That means you set the vision and the parameters for what you want to happen in the coming term, but then you let your board members thrive and flourish and bring their own creativity and their own style to delivering on the goals. So you have a lot of that at your fingertips. You have access to the MPI mission and the vision and the value statement that helps build that framework. You have the different objectives and strategies in your business plan and your calendar. So you can set forth with that framework, but then really support, bring it to the strengths of your board members rather than only leading with your own strengths. Psychological safety is also a really important concept. You want to cultivate an environment where people feel like there could be what's called creative abrasion. That means that people play a little bit of devil's advocate or throw out some kind of crazy ideas. That's how you learn and grow. And maybe you don't take every single idea and run with it, but over time, your processes or your programs may evolve because there are people who are willing to safely say things like, hey, what if we tried something different than what we've always done? It's just important that when you do create that environment, that you do address any conflict that may arise and make sure that those conversations remain professional. But I think that they could be very fruitful for you. Accountability is super important, and the best way that you can hold your board members accountable is to lead by example. So if you're missing board meetings, if you're not getting back to people, if you're not holding your end of the deal up, your board members are not going to do that either. So making sure that you show up, that you're giving 100% when you're present, and encouraging your board members to be communicative about times where things might be difficult or stressful for them, so you can help them out and keep everybody on track. Clear direction. So making sure that in addition to that clear mission and vision, you're defining what success looks like. So that quote, you need to name it to claim it. Use the tools that you have, like your business plan, to help you do that and celebrate those small wins. Make sure that the team understands when they are all moving in the right direction and accomplishing the right goals. Professional growth. So not everyone is in this just altruistically, right? I mean, they're doing this because they love MPI and because they love the chapter, but they're also doing this to get something out of it. And that's some kind of professional development or professional growth. So you as the Office of the President can help them, determine what kind of skill sets need to be developed for you to be successful in your role. How can we help connect you with other people who may be able to share best practices with you? So remembering that the chapter leaders are also seeking some growth out of this opportunity. Activity alignment, that just means that you're making sure your teams are not working in silos. So if everyone's sort of on their own path and you're not sharing and collaborating, it's very easy to start going off on tangents and then realizing too far into the game that you haven't all been moving the ball in the same direction. So rather than having to then backtrack and fix, make sure everybody is aware through whether it's your board reports or your board meetings or whatnot, that you're all working on the same plan and going in the same direction, aligning your efforts. And then having clear vision and high morale. So for those of you who have worked with me in facilitating, you know, I always say one of my favorite quotes is that culture eats strategy for breakfast. I say over and over and over, I can go in, Tara can go in, any facilitator can help teach strategy to a board. You cannot teach culture. It's something that is from the ground up. And it really starts with the office of the president. Are you being supportive? Are you celebrating small wins? Are you acknowledging contributions? Are you making the experience fun? It's not supposed to be just a second job that you toil through. It's supposed to be a fun growth experience. So doing your best to kind of making sure that you're keeping morale high will then result in your board members being very productive for you. So that's sort of the lay of the land in terms of what your responsibilities are as the office of the president. And now Tara will tell you a little bit more about how to lay the foundation for your board.
Thanks, Kate. So you're in the thick of it right now. We're starting retreat season. There are a lot of things you should be communicating to your board to make sure that there's some clear understanding and a solid foundation. This should be happening now, board orientation, transitions, and chapter retreats. So first, we need to make sure that everybody has read their roles and responsibilities and have an understanding of what their position is in regards to the entire board. Then it's also important not to assume that the entire board knows exactly what the division of responsibilities are for the office of the president. So you'll want to make it clear what the IPP does versus the PE versus the president, and make sure that that is clear and communicated. So requirements, you want to make sure that they understand that attendance is expected at all board meetings and retreats. We know life happens. However, that should be the goal to strive for. That we have to submit monthly, whether they're team status reports, board reports, whatever you call them, making sure that those are submitted in a timely manner. Almost nobody submits them timely. So let's reiterate, submit them in a timely manner so that they can be compiled and put in your consent agenda. Expectations. It's important that you have a conversation with every department on what you expect from them. And then more importantly, what they can expect from you. Accountability, what qualifies as an excused absence? How do your board members prefer to receive feedback when they're not meeting expectations? What derelictions of duty might necessitate removal? You want to make sure you have very clear ground rules in place prior to needing to deal with any situation. Role descriptions we mentioned, have they read them? We try to say roles and responsibilities versus job descriptions, but you get the point. Did they take their assigned trainings, which should be taking place now? Have they asked clarifying questions when necessary regarding their positions? So we want to make sure that they have a very clear understanding. Role readiness, did they participate in transition meetings? Do they understand how to ensure business continuity and how to implement new initiatives? Financial acumen, look, we're not expecting anybody to be an accountant, but we are expecting that our board members have an understanding of what income and expenses their department is responsible for. So making sure that you've explained that and provided any necessary training. And then governance documents. Have they received the bylaws and policies? Have they read them? I always tell people, get that glass of wine on a Friday night and sit down with your bylaws. It's one of those things where they're not the most exciting to read. However, it's very important that they understand them because those are the guiding principles of our organization. Did they sign their conflict of interest form? Do they understand the significance of all these documents? So making sure that you clearly communicate requirements, expectations, accountability, role descriptions, role readiness, financial acumen, and governance documents need to be done and communicated before July 1.
All right, so that takes it over to me. So I'm going to talk a little bit about chapter performance standards. These are all shared responsibilities for the Office of the Presidency. And there was a change that took place. I think it was actually late 2022, where we adjusted the performance standards. Previously, there were 5 that each chapter was held accountable for. We narrowed that down to 3, and I'm going to talk more about the simplification of the chapter experience here on the next slide. But I wanted to reinforce that this was one of those pieces that's happened over the course of the past 8 years to try and make the chapter experience leaner, meaner, and better. So your scored standards are member satisfaction and growth. So member satisfaction and growth, there's 2 components there. Each year in February/March, we send out our member chapter satisfaction survey. So in that survey, when it goes out, we not only look at just general satisfaction of members for MPI in their general experience, but we also look at their satisfaction at the chapter level. So when those scores come through, there are different barometers that we use and kind of a baseline that we use for each chapter to ensure that you're performing on the satisfaction level. And it's a simple question. It's how satisfied are you with your chapter? And then growth. Growth is clearly a key initiative for this organization. I mentioned that one of the units that I drive is membership. And I can tell you that when the pandemic hit, we got hit really hard for membership, but I will also tell you that we're coming out of it fast right now. We're experiencing an 8-year-old style growth spurt. I can speak from experience as Kate can. When they get about that age, kids really start to grow. We're kind of hitting that age, so we're really seeing a lot of growth on the membership side. So we want to make sure that each chapter is held accountable for their growth. Administration and finance. So clearly, as Tara mentioned, we don't expect you to be CPAs. We do expect chapters to adhere to financial stability and make sure that you have a sustainable financial plan in place. So one of the changes that's being made is that you no longer have to do a formal audit. However, you do have to keep up with your finances, and that is a way in which you're scored. And the final, educational offerings. So I'm going to keep referencing the changes, but we reduced the educational events minimum down to 4 per year, but you are held accountable for that. Some of the non-scored standards, and frankly, these are things that as facilitators and then the comms team also keep a close eye on: communication and brand. So you're really speaking into my language at this point. I will tell you that in general, the chapters over the course of the past 5 years since I've been at MPI have gotten exceptionally better at brand standards. If there's one thing that drives me absolutely bananas, you see the logo in the upper right-hand corner. Do you see the little R that's next to it? When I don't see that R, it drives me absolutely crazy. I realize that it's a small thing, but our logo and your chapter logo is specific to your chapter and this organization. So it's critical that simple things like that are kept in mind. And when you are putting out your own communications, go back to the brand guidelines that are offered within the CLRP and make sure, as in the Office of the Presidency, frankly, you shouldn't necessarily be getting into the weeds of how marketing is being put together, but you can be that watchful eye, and you can be an extension of me, frankly, and making sure that your communications and brand is on point. Next is leadership and engagement. So again, this is a non-scored standard, but this is something that our comms team and the facilitators really keep a close eye on to ensure that you within the Office of the Presidency and the chapter in general, that your leadership and your engagement is staying strong. As volunteer chapter leaders, it's your responsibility to come in and really drive the success of your chapter. And this is how you get to kind of grow personally and professionally. And speaking of brand, you get to use this opportunity to grow your own personal brand. So it's a non-scored standard, but it's something you should take very seriously. So I went through all of these just about, 30-40 minutes ago, and I realized that there's a lot here. So with this group, I'm going to take a little bit more depth so that you understand what each of these changes mean. And when we get to the Q&A, we can then open it up, because I'm sure that there's going to be some questions for this. So one of the biggest changes in terms of requirements for chapter size and club size, we dropped that chapter size down to allow for a couple of things. It allows for us to grow our chapter network quicker, frankly. Having that minimum of 50, we found over the course of the past number of years, especially the past 3, adding new chapters has been a significant challenge because we've seen this industry change in terms of its composition of professionals. We've also seen our organization drop in terms of membership. So now this gives a lower baseline for chapters to begin. And we also pulled in that startup model. So clubs previously had the ability to get a startup rebate, which that rebate, and this is kind of a startup engine of 2 years. So you get when a chapter is launching, they will get a 50% rebate for 2 years, and they get an initial seed funding of $1,000 to help kick the chapter in gear. So that actually moved from club level up to forming chapters. Now the clubs, we have reduced these responsibilities significantly. So now clubs actually start at just 20, where they're currently 30. They no longer have that startup rebate. They no longer have the seed money. They don't have a rebate at all. These are informal groupings of members that can help to really start to grow MPI much more organically. Board officers. So, I said this a lot on the conversation earlier. These are minimums, okay? So we have changed our minimums to be 5 officers. These are 5 humans that will occupy these 5 roles. All of you on the Office of the Presidency, then finance and membership. These other 2 roles are still required to be filled, but you don't have to have a physical person individually devoted to that role. It can be absorbed by one of your 5 minimum officers. Now, the vast majority of chapters will not have a problem with this, but those chapters that are in the startup phase or chapters that are really struggling, this is going to help them. This is going to help because a lot of the chapters that are struggling, they struggle to fill these roles. Another maximum that we put in there was board officers, and this really only that we're knowledgeable of, it only affects 1 chapter that's even sniffing this, but currently the max number of officers is 25. We're going to reduce that to 20. This is in an effort to just make your chapter leadership less cumbersome, to really take away some of the challenges associated with having too many cooks in the kitchen. Board meetings minimum. So that's currently 6. We're adjusting that down to 4. Key word, minimum. So if you're currently meeting monthly, keep meeting monthly. If you're currently meeting 8 times a year, keep meeting 8 times a year, whatever works for you. But if you need to adjust back to the minimum and go to quarterly, that's fine. Same thing with your education events. Now, it's specific to understand here, when we, over the course of the past 3 years, that has already been adjusted down to 4. So that's been working. That's been working well. So we're sticking with that. And just a sidebar, something that Eliza didn't mention on her EDI segment earlier, we're working with committees like EDI to start putting together education in a box so that chapters can have some pre-built education. So if you are struggling putting together a program, we're going to start providing you more resources. So they're actually working on that pretty aggressively now. We're hopeful that we can get something done over the course of the next few months. So, in that scenario, you get this education in a box. So you get upwards of 40 minutes of content and then some guidance on how to continue that session so that it's hours worthy. Annual performance reviews. So those are being adjusted down to just 1 per year. Annual retreats are being adjusted down to 1 per year as well. For each of those, I mentioned this earlier, if the chapter needs it, then we will continue with an optional second performance review. If the chapter needs it, then we would suggest continuing with your mid-year retreat as well. If you're already committed to having a mid-year retreat and you've already contracted with a facilitator for the latter part of this year, please don't break that agreement. Stay with that. It's just best business practice for that. Financial audit review. So I noted earlier that the VP of Finance is a required position, and that's because financial stability is critical for your chapter to continue forward. That said, putting together, CPA authorized audits is a big challenge. So if you want to continue doing that, you can. It's discretionary. It's not required. MPI is no longer making that hey, we have to see an audit each year. So this is one that the next two are two that I didn't necessarily mention on the call, just or on the conversation earlier, because it's getting into a little bit of the weeds. But board meeting absences in its current state, if a board of director has two back-to-back unexcused absences, it's deemed as being a resignation. Now, because look, things are nuts, and especially with our industry really blowing back up, fortunately, and all of us being very, very busy, we're going to put more flexibility there. So as a board of director, if you do miss, two back-to-back meetings and you don't necessarily have an excuse for it, work with the rest of the board, Office of the Presidency, especially to, you kind of make your own assessment there. And then this to me is how we are really working to reduce some of the administrative requirements. So in its current form, your global and chapter standards, your bylaws and policies are integrated together. And this goes back to that localized experience. So in its current form, if you want to make a change at the local level to your chapter bylaws and policies, you've actually got to do a formal amendment, and that's a pain in the ass. So what we're going to do now is, instead of that, we're going to separate the bylaws and policies so that chapters will have an amendment. So I'm here in Dallas. So the DFW chapter, if you've got some, local requirements that change how the MPI chapter bylaws and policies work, then it's just an addendum to the bylaws and policies. So we're not having to go through all this amendment practices. Okay. That was a lot. Queue up questions and I will answer them in just a bit. I'll pass it over.
Okay, now we are going to talk about chapter administrators. So something to be aware of is that the sourcing and contracting for a chapter administrator who is a vendor contracted by the board of directors falls under your purview. So it's not something that Global is going to do for you or suggest for you. It is a process that you will be in charge of. So kind of defining what that scope of services is going to look like. Now, for your scope of services, this varies greatly across chapters. Different chapters have different needs that they define and need to kind of send to a chapter administrator to handle. Some of the most common responsibilities that we see outsourced to the chapter administrator would be things like bookkeeping, marketing communications, event registration, etc. However, it is completely up to you at the chapter level as to what you have them do and what you don't, what meetings they attend for you, if they come to retreats. All of those things are decisions that are made at the chapter level. So, the Office of the President should be discussing and making sure to have buy-in from the board. Once you do contract, it's really important to pay attention to the clear division of labor. And I think, at least in my experience working with chapters, this is where things can sometimes get confusing, is if you have a scope of services for your chapter administrator, please make sure you share that with your board members and make sure that you have a time where you discuss with the chapter administrator and the board who does what. Because what ends up happening is people aren't really clear, so then they end up doing things that were already being done elsewhere, and you have duplicative work and confusion, and it wastes lots of time and money in the process. So just being really clear between both the chapter admin and your board members, again, like Tara said, get that wine glass and read that scope of services so that you know exactly what it is you're outsourcing so you can be as successful as possible with that partnership. For compensation, the fees associated with the contracts are also determined at the chapter level. So it's really important that you are making sure that you have proper fiscal oversight and you are making sure that what you're committing to for that contract is okay with your budget levels and what you're able to contribute. If you're looking for some advice on, how to set, what's proper compensation, by all means, you can talk to other chapters. Just be aware that there may be differences in the scope of services, or even just the cost of living in different regions might affect what different levels are. So keep that in mind if you're talking to other chapters about what they pay or who they use for their chapter administrators. The annual performance review. So this is important too, and sometimes chapters forget that this is a requirement, but each year, as a best practice especially, you should have an annual performance review with your chapter administrator. And this can get a little interesting because so many chapter administrators are friends with the board members. Of course, they're wonderful people, they're valued partners, you work together well. Just remember that these performance reviews are not a personal evaluation, of your chapter administrator. They're looking at the scope of services. Are things going well? Should changes be made? Any tweaks or finessing that need to happen, and making sure that you are both part of the conversation, that you are making sure your interests are represented as well as their interests are being represented. So making sure that you are, the Office of the President is holding that annual performance review. And just seeing the chapter administrator as a valuable partner. So oftentimes chapter administrators will be, the constant, because they typically will be part of a chapter for multiple terms. So this means they tend to have a wealth of knowledge and historical knowledge about what the chapter has done in the past or what MPI Global has prescribed in the past. So, lean on them, use them as a resource. That's what they're there for, is to help you. And I think most of the folks that I've met are wonderful and happy to pitch in and offer advice whenever they're asked. So we can go to the next slide, Drew, and talk about the policies and guidelines. So you want to make sure that when you are contracting with your chapter administrator, that you're including the terms from the CAP policy manual addendum. That is found in the CLRP, so you can go to the chapter leader resource page and make sure that that language is included in what you are doing with your chapter administrator. The chapter administrator must provide proof of a business license and general liability insurance. So again, just proper business practices, making sure you're crossing your T's and dotting your I's there. And your chapter administrator must complete the MPI CAP training. And so that just makes sure there's compliance with, MPI brand standards, financial standards, that everything that they're doing is in line with what MPI supports and values. So that is it for chapter administrators. And Tara will tell you more about your chapter comms.
Sure. I saw in the chat, someone said the administrators are magicians. That they are, but we have another team of people that are magicians, and those are your chapter operations managers.
And she's not, they're not in the room, so she's not just saying that.
Yeah, no, I would tell them to their face too, for sure. So your chapter operations manager, we call them comms. Your success is their success. So they have a vested interest in partnering with you. Now, I do want to point out at the bottom of your screen, I want to be clear, your comm does not act as your administrator, nor do they do your work for you. So remember that when you reach out to them. However, they do a bunch of other stuff to support you. So currently your chapter operation managers are Angela Layton, Marcelo de Oliveira, and Federico Toya. And they can offer you guidance, not only for the things that are up on the screen, but volunteer management, working with you on your business plans and your budgets, making sure that you have healthy finances, achieving your performance standards, brand integrity, helping you find talent and succession planning, global best practices, periodic review with the Office of the President. They're your connection to other chapters. They'll help you focus on sustainable solutions. So we know we have challenges, but we need to stay solution focused and not commiserate and dwell. And then lastly, chapter recognition programs and awards. So stay in touch, communicate, keep them in the loop. They're here to help you be successful. And another group of people here to help you be successful is the Chapter Membership and Advisory Council. We call them CMAC. CMAC has a program called CMAC Connects, where they've assigned a chapter liaison to each chapter. So let me start. CMAC is a global volunteer committee created to provide feedback and input on MPI global initiatives and strategies, as requested by MPI staff. So on issues directly impacting chapters and members. They also provide input on issues presented through the MPI Cares program, and they're also responsible for the facilitator program and its management. With that said, you will be contacted by your liaison. They're available to you year-round. They're here to help you. If you have questions, concerns, don't hesitate to reach out to them. These are past former chapter leaders, so they've been in your shoes and they're here to help.
All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about your chapter support framework. There's, as you can see on the screen here, there's really three different areas. There, first is your programs. We try and do, I mentioned this earlier, we really try to put together as many resources as we can to help make this process easy for chapter leaders and especially for the Office of the Presidency. So in terms of programs, we offer a lot of different webinars and resources and things like that. We've got administrator certification, facilitator certification. Now, see, I said this earlier that every once in a while we might find an old CBS Chapter Business Summit on here. So you can call me out for this because I didn't catch it.
Oh.
Yeah, so that should be CLS and WEC. Then we've got volunteer training, and then we have MPI Cares. Is there anybody, and you can drop this in the chat because I can go into more explanation. Is there anybody who's not familiar with MPI Cares? Everybody's familiar. That's great. It's a very good resource. It's completely confidential. We tend to have a few cases per year, and it's always handled very, very well. So please use that resource. In terms of platforms and services, a lot of this, I mentioned earlier, we've done a lot of changes over the course of the past 7-8 years, and a lot of that came through updates to our platforms and services. So you have, as I'm sure you all know, you have your own chapter website that is managed through MPI, and you've got a devoted team at MPI who makes adjustments and can assist your marketing and communications team. You've got your own accounting software. You've got accessibility to Cvent as part of our partnership with them. You've got association management system. And then, of course, as Tara just spoke about a second ago, your chapter operations managers. Now, in terms of standards, there are, as I mentioned earlier in long link, your chapter bylaws, your global branding, and then your performance metrics. And on the next slide, the best place to find out more information and depth about these resources is your chapter leader resource page. Now, when you go to mpi.org, and you log into the website, in your upper right-hand corner here, right there, if you can see my mouse, you'll see your account profile. When you tap on that, it will expand down, and as a chapter leader, you have access to the chapter leader resource page, and it will be a little bit of an expandable there. So you can go in there and you can get everything from brand guidelines over to, chapter administrator function, chapter leader training. So this will be located once we get it downloaded and pushed up. This will be on the CLRP. CLS will be on a CLRP. So we really try and make this the clear forum for chapter leaders to go and gain more insights. And I'll toss one other thing out there. We just went through an extensive redesign of the chapter leader resource page. And then we also went through an extensive redesign of our chapter leader newsletter, which comes out the second Thursday of every month. And that is, it's a good idea to mark your calendar the second Thursday or maybe the second Friday of every month to jump onto the CLRP and make sure you access the chapter leader newsletter, because that's where we have our monthly updates and they're extensive. And look, I'm going to play marketing guy again here. Keeping in tune with the MPI brand and looking at what promotions MPI has going on worldwide, please access the marketing tab within here and make sure that your marketing and communications office is driving forward the most recent pieces. That I will tell you, having come up within the marketing team at MPI, they work very, very hard to make sure you have creative resources that align with what MPI is doing in general, so that we kind of have that one message that's going out uniform. Tara, no, is this still me?
So, so financial oversight. So Drew touched upon this earlier. Although you have a VP of Finance who's actively managing the budget, and perhaps your chapter administrator who may be doing the bookkeeping, depending on your scope of services, the Office of the President is still the ultimate person, a group that's responsible for financial oversight. So you can't just kind of ship it off and say, okay, they've got it under control. It is still your fiduciary responsibility to make sure that your chapter is solvent, that you have reserves in place, all of those things. So the Office of the President should work with the VP of Finance to plan for and address any revenue shortfalls or unanticipated expenses. So how I typically explain this at my retreats is, while you might have a bookkeeper, sometimes the VP of Finance or the Office of the President is like, well, there's a bookkeeper, so they're already keeping the numbers. That's true, but it's your responsibility to be analyzing that and raising red flags. Did we hit our revenue target last month? Did we not? If we didn't, where are we adjusting, further down the line to compensate for that, and so forth. So you are sort of making sure that you're keeping tabs on those red flags and those targets, and sharing with, to prime the rest of your board members. So the VP of Education might need to know, hey, we didn't hit our goal last month. How can you help us adjust for next month? That helps prepare them in the succession pipeline. If possible, especially coming out of COVID, where I feel like all or almost all of us were using those reserves for that rainy day, it's important that they're now being replenished to help provide a safety net for future boards. So we are also lucky that the board members that came before us, did a great job of building up our reserves to help us survive the pandemic. Let's do future boards a favor and return the reserves to a healthy place. And then financial controls should be communicated to all board members. So this should be happening now. If it didn't happen at your board orientation, perhaps bring it into your retreat or your handoff meetings. Who can sign contracts? What is the check request process? How do you apply for reimbursements? That should all be very clear to make sure everybody is following the proper controls. Something else that's important to note is that if you do find yourself in a place where the finances are, going south and you're not quite sure what to do, bring your comm into that conversation early. They are there for you to help you strategize and to help you come up with best practices to be at a sustainable level. So don't wait until it's a dire situation. The earlier you can bring your comm into the conversation, the more better off you'll be financially.
All right. So we did say that you do not have to be a CPA, but we do encourage you to consult a CPA. Led by the VP of Finance, we have to take care of our taxes and annual review. Again, you're not required to do an audit, but you should take a look annually at your finances. And the other thing here is that oftentimes, depending on scope of service, your administrator or executive director, depending on the title, will support you in this. This is mainly for domestic chapters. So if you're with an international chapter or club, we ask that you follow your local laws regarding finances, taxes, and reviews.
All right, so I'm going to give a quick plug for the MPI Foundation. Kevin is going to spend some time later today giving you some stats and some details about the foundation. But what I want to bring this forward to, I want to talk about two specific things for you as the Office of the President. One is the foundation has set aside fund for chapter grants. So if there is something in particular that your chapter is needing some funding for that would pair with that grant, then go look at mpi.org foundation and mpi.org/foundation and try and find some details there. There's an area within the website where you can submit for a chapter grant, and it's a simple form that you fill out. That money is there. It's there to be used specifically. The second is keep in tune. Okay, I'm going to have a bonus. So the second is keep in tune with what scholarships are out there. The foundation is constantly getting, I should say constantly, is often getting some funds, not as constant as we would like, is often getting funding from, you know, groups like Destination Toronto or IMEX or Marriott. They get funds that are Hilton, actually. Hilton, I think, actually has a program out right now. But they have programs out there that your members within your chapter can use, because there'll be scholarships for your members to get their membership renewed and or for potential new members to come into the fold. I know the foundation did a ton. I want to say it was $1.3 million worth of funding over a 2-year span during the pandemic to make whole over 3,000 members to maintain their membership. That's what they exist for. So that bonus, the third one, and you'll hear Kevin say this earlier, they output a lot of money to help our membership over the course of the pandemic, and those coffers need to be refilled. Kevin is very good about working with his team, and he's a team of 2, to output reports to each chapter, so you know how much money not only your chapter is contributing, but how much you're getting too. So they can track how many scholarships are going towards individuals in your chapter, and then they can track any chapter grants that are coming through. And I will tell you right now that it's usually, I think on average, it's about a 10-to-1, meaning the foundation is returning $10 for every one that the chapters are giving. So it's not overly equitable, and we'd love to see that balance out a little bit more. You know, the spigot's never going to get turned off from the foundation. That's what they're there for, but they do need help and support. There's a lot of fundraising initiatives that they'll do, like, you know, Rendezvous and silent auctions and things like that. And that's great for raising funds. But what's even better is when the chapters actually jump in there. I will call out pretty much the entire country of Canada, because Canada has done a lot of great initiatives for the foundation over the course of the past few years, whether they're, you know, concerted events or just fundraising initiatives. They're a good model to kind of look at.
Before you go to the next slide, I just wanted to point out that your facilitators have your slides for the foundation that say how much you've been given and how much you've given. Receipt. Yeah, that was weird. So if, in case you don't see it in their PowerPoint, ask them, will they have been sent all of those so that you can take a good look and see how you've done.
Yeah. So Jill, I'm glad you brought up that model. So there's, depending upon what software solution you use, I know Cvent offers this. You have the ability to build in an optional donation into every single event registration that you do. So we do that for WBC, we do that for EMEC, we do that for our own events. At the chapter level, if you can start doing that, look, man, if it generates $50, that's every dollar counts. So media and optics, again, this kind of fits right into my my wheelhouse. So as the Office of the Presidency, you're also really responsible for how the chapter appears in its local market and press, et cetera. And that bubbles up to MPI just in general. So local chapter press releases are absolutely allowed for every local event that you put on. In fact, I would encourage them. The more that you can get your local media involved in your events, your CSR initiatives, et cetera, the better off MPI in general looks, because we have a lot of contacts on the national and international level. What we struggle with, to be quite frank, is contacts at the local level, and that's where we can use your support. So working with your marketing and communications team, inevitably there's somebody who knows someone who's involved in a PR agency. Pull them in and start to get those contacts. What I would request is any media requests that come through MPI Global, just make sure you know essential talking points so you can represent the brand. And that's reaching out to the marketing team at MPI. You can do that through your comp. Always comply with any 501c3 status or legal requirements that are set by your country or region as it relates to media. And then again, if there is a hot button issue, and these certainly come up, don't be afraid to reach out to your comm, who can then get you in touch with our director of marketing or one of our marketing managers who can really help you work through some, some rough situations. These things do come up. If you don't know how to react, if media reaches out to you and you don't know what to say, and some of those talking points aren't there for you, reach out to us. We want to make sure that we're providing you with the resources and the tools necessary so that, you're not being put into a sticky situation.
Okay, so timelines and things that you need to be aware of. First of all, there are timelines that are to date in the chapter leader resource page for president-elects, presidents, and immediate past presidents. So you should never not be in the know of what's due what month, because it's all listed there. But I do want to highlight a couple things. Most of your documents come together at your retreat. We know that you work on your business plan, budget, and calendar. We know that your incoming board slate is due March 1st, so everybody should have that done and completed. And I know many retreats have already started and taking place. We're right in the thick of season. We want to make sure that the preparation of the documents coincides with transitioning of roles, executing board orientations and transition meetings, and especially at your retreats. We want to make sure that each of your board members is prepared at the annual retreat to talk to their department needs, anticipated goals, and budget requests, and making sure that everything is aligning with the vision and mission of the chapter and the organization. So I already mentioned the March 1st incoming board slate. In March, you should have your transition meetings, your board 101, board orientation, whatever you call it. Retreats are between April and mid-June. And then June 15th is the big day. This is when you have quite a bit that's due: budget, business plan, calendar, your chapter operations form, your administrator's contract, your metric goals in conjunction with your chapter operation managers, and then any updated bylaws and policy manuals. And then October 1st is your taxes and year-end financials. And then mid-year retreats are in late October, really November, December, and January. Again, the timelines are in the chapter leader resource page. I want to point out that this was in the global update, that there will be the changes to the bylaws and policies and procedures that Drew mentioned. You will have the opportunity to do that amendment appendix piece between July 1 and December 31st. So I encourage you, I mentioned that you should vote your nominations governance committee in August, and they should be kept busy all year. This is a project that they should do on behalf of the chapter. So you can have them, well, you'll be given instructions on how to do all of this, but they're the team that can work on that for you. Okay, so with that, it is Q&A time. So Drew said that if you have questions, if you can raise your hands and we will field those for you. Oh my gosh, so many familiar faces.
Jen, you've got a question. Go ahead.
Yep. Hi, Tara. Hi, Kate. Hi, Drew. Okay, so I have two real quickly. Just again, can you remind us what the CMAC does? Like differentiate between the CMAC and the comms?
Yeah, so your chapter membership advisory council and your comms. Your comms are your chapter operations managers. Chapter operation managers are employed by MPI. So that's Angela, Federico, and Marcelo. Your comms they're kind of your liaison and business manager over at MPI. They are incredibly, far more than me, informed about your chapter bylaws, your chapter policies, and they work with you on your performance standards as well. So we've got a whole, in fact, this is something that MPI has been focusing on pretty heavily, is business intel. And what we've done over the course of the past year or so is really develop out a chapter business intel that the comms have access to, so that they can look at and monitor really closely how the chapters are performing, to ensure that they can assist you with any pieces that may be going a little bit sideways. And it sounds like
Federico.
Is that Federico?
I think it's Federico. If you're on, can you mute?
Still changing the look.
It's not. That's somebody else's voice.
You didn't call
Not me,
me.
it's Marquez.
Oh, Marquez, do you mind putting yourself on mute? We're still getting a little bit of
I
feedback.
didn't look.
Let me see if I
You
can.
did. I remember you did set up.
I cannot.
I didn't look at the contract for setup.
Hey, Marquez. He might have us on mute, but
Yeah.
stuff on mute. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't.
The host
I
should
didn't
have the
look
ability to mute.
because
Yeah,
you
I am
set
not
up,
a
so I
host.
didn't look.
Saw that.
I looked at
I
time.
didn't see that.
So maybe there's a co-host.
Yeah, he's all right. Well, nope, he's gonna. Okay, we'll just try and battle through. So, Jen, that's your comm side of it. Your CMAC is made up of MPI members. Your chair of the CMAC currently is Liz Hogan, and there's also a board liaison. That
Especially
board
if they call
liaison is
that.
Michelle
They say
Allgaier.
they need to talk to me. Text. You didn't call. Text.
Maybe we can message Marquez. Yeah, Phil, we're not the host. They are over in the production room right now.
That even
Tell you what, you
Want me to run?
yeah.
it's like. It's
Fortunately,
like
Tara can move quickly, so she's gonna move over there and see if they can maybe make us
Don't
host
wait.
and or just mute.
Tell you.
All right, so I'll do my best and hopefully you can still hear. So your CMAC is your chapter membership advisory
That's what I
council.
mean.
The current chair is Liz Hogan. Past chair was Shannon Jones. Your IBOD liaison is Michelle Allgaier.
Done.
Michelle is the incoming International Board of Directors
This morning I
chair.
had to do this.
She'll be the
They
chair
wanna
next
talk to
year.
me. It's
They
like
are
now,
responsible
I'm like,
for advising
I know,
us
okay, I
on
need
a
to
number
come
of
in
initiatives,
and talk to
everything from
so then I
assisting
can
the chapter,
try to
assisting from
change
this
my
chapter
time.
redesign. Can't hear.
So only when I can do
I'm
that.
I'm
because
sorry, I missed
have a
I
call
missed the
now,
first thing.
and then I have to leave.
Okay, let me give Tara a second, see if because
Yeah.
it's just
known early that I need to do that. I would have came in.
I would try and mime this for you, but it wouldn't work out well. Or interpretive dance. Actually, Kate can do
So it's
interpretive
not-
dance
it's
for
not
us.
Oh,
that.
that would be, okay. I'm up for that, sure.
Drew, I think you might be co-host now.
I know.
All right.
And also,
You see your
this
host.
is like
Yeah.
like a lesson, right? We know
Yeah.
always check when you
Yep.
do the setup.
Okay, look at that. Now we're set. Okay. Everybody's got to get on Marquez for this. Okay, so how much, Jen, could you hear everything basically
So
until?
yeah, I know the COM, I got that.
Okay.
Just curious about what the CMAC can,
Gotcha.
offer,
Okay.
so we can use them.
Yeah. So they function like any other advisory council at MPI. What that means is that they help us work through different strategies and ensure that what we're doing from a chapter and membership perspective makes sense at the membership level, while also helping us with that balance to make sense at the kind of general MPI level, where they have been very heavily involved over the past, I mean, I said it's 7 years, but really the past 6-12 months has been in the chapter redesign. So they have been working with us. There's multiple subcommittees within the CMAC, but they've been working with us on the structure of this redesign, the kind of some of the updated requirements that were put forth. And specifically, there is a chapter subcommittee that spent a ton of time on this, and that's led by Patrick Colomer. And then there's a fact subcommittee that's built of all of our sampling of our facilitators, of which Tara is involved. So yeah, that's just the general role of advisory councils, and that's how the CMAC weighs in. Anything I missed there?
Nope.
Okay.
Drew, can I just give a plug? So for those of you going into your IPP year and wondering, Some of you will be ready for vacation, but some of you will wonder what's next. CMAC is one of the global volunteer committees and task forces that are open to you to apply for as an MPI member to represent your chapter and your experience and your expertise. So after you complete your IPP year, or even during, if you're super ambitious, go to the MPI website and see. I think the call for volunteers usually goes out, is it like late summer, Drew?
That's right.
September, October, I think.
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, so keep an eye out for that if you're interested in being one of the voices on those committees.
We could do this one.
Yeah, go ahead. There's a couple that came in just through the
Wait, one
Q&A.
more. Can I
Yeah.
ask
Oh, yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Jen.
Okay, so I just wonder what the conversation is around reducing the number of required education
Mhm.
events per year and how that might affect perceived value of membership to prospective members.
Yeah, good. I'm glad you asked that question. Understanding again, this is the minimum. So it's reducing the minimum down to 4. So this means as a chapter, if you've got the ability to put on 5, 6, 12, exceed that minimum. That's the better case scenario. The reason we dropped it to 4 is to really help those chapters that are struggling to get the content together and or the sponsors. So what we saw, especially over the course of the past 3 years and beyond, is that there are some chapters that just, the networking events, that's kind of easy. You find a venue and you get together. That's relatively easy. The educational events, though, that's a bigger challenge. So we're trying to drop that requirement to help make the experience of driving and maintaining a chapter to try and make it simpler.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Regarding the slides, I think Chris Bennett, you asked this, everything will be under chapter leader training in the chapter leader resource page. Maybe not tomorrow, but in shortly.
Yeah. Take a little bit of time. So Lauren, will the changes be emailed to all of us or sent in the newsletter? So yeah, that deck that I reviewed earlier that had a lot more details, that's going to be provided in the CLRP. So when we get this, when we get all these recordings put up there, there will be a PDF of that deck as well. Noreen, you've got your hand up.
Good morning, and hi, Tara. Nice to see you again. Mike, I have a quick question. So we have our immediate past president now, who will be staying on the board next term. And I've seen titles given such as director at large. But is that the proper description for the role, or is there something a little more inclusive that we could assign, like so that they would be, I don't know, just feel like they belonged a little bit more to the board? It just seems a little bit vague.
So Noreen, tell me again, what was
So our immediate past president this
Uh-huh.
term, Anne-Marie would like to stay on in an advisory and supportive role on the board. So currently we have a director at large. Is that the proper role description for someone that's staying on?
Well, typically they would fill a position.
Mhm.
They would do finance, membership, education. So if she's staying on, normally the board person would fill those, but because a lot of chapters have past presidents councils where someone can be an advisory position. But I guess there's nothing stopping you from having a director at large if she's not going to fill a position with a title.
Yeah. Okay. Just wondered if
But-
that was the proper description. It just seems very vague.
But we
don't know.
should, I just want to caution you that we want to be careful. We're not creating positions for people. We're creating positions to run our business.
Very good point.
Right.
So and I adore Anne-Marie, so I know who you're talking about. But just because she wants to stay on,
Mhm.
doesn't mean you would create a position for her. Really, anybody on the board should be filling those positions that run the business of the organization.
Right, right. And if the positions are filled, it's more just, like I said, a support position or advisory position.
That wouldn't really be a board position. That would,
wouldn't, okay,
yeah, that would be on like a council, or you can create a
Okay.
committee to put her in charge, the advisory committee. I mean, you could create any name you want except on the board.
right,
So,
okay,
questions in the chat
okay,
too.
thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to address a couple of questions in the chat here. One of them, Elizabeth asked when the results from this year's survey come out. We're working on those now. Our goal is to get those to you within the next probably 3 to 4 weeks. So you'll have all of those. Let's see. And then question on the education events, they went from 4. So is it that 4 CEU credit hours, or is CEU credit hours not part of the discussion anymore and it's 4 separate events? So
It is part of it. So the minimum is 4. To start qualifying for incentives, you need to have 4 education, 2 of which are EIC approved. And of course, most of my chapters get all of their education EIC approved. So that's a best practice. That's what's going to sell your program. So I wouldn't change what you normally do. I would say you want all your programming, if you can, to qualify for that. But if you want to get incentives or points, you have to have at least 2 in EIC. And I think Floor had a question.
Floor had a question, but she put her hand out. Or Floor, did you just want to put a?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was gonna ask that preview question, but since I'm here, and thanks for giving me the opportunity, can you also explain, give us a quick explanation? How can we get associate members to our chapters, and do they count as membership in the final count, or how does that work?
Do you mean affiliate members?
Yes.
So the team can weigh in here more, but my understanding is that each chapter can create its own affiliate program, and you can actually set the price point as well. They do not count towards your chapter member count, but it's essentially
cash.
Yeah, it's another revenue opportunity for you.
Yeah, and so a couple things. One, you can set the price. They range from about $75 to $100. A trend sweeping the United States right now is affiliate passport programs, where a cluster of chapters will negotiate with each other a rate that allows them to be an affiliate of all those chapters in the group. It actually could be a really cool thing for our chapters in other countries, like Europe would be a great one to do it. But yeah, it's mainly about cash.
Perfect. Okay. I think that's a great, as you said, that's a great opportunity to get more revenue to our chapter. So thanks for sharing that.
I want to do a quick plug and thanks to Floor, because Floor is doing a ton for us. You see, she's president of Caribbean Mexico chapter. She is doing a ton to help promote WEC down there. She is a huge ambassador. So I just wanted, with this group, I wanted to recognize Floor. So thank you for that, Floor.
And I hope to see you all here in a couple of weeks. Please, I hope you already signed in for WEC. This is going to be a great event. So we'll see you all here.
Yes,
absolutely.
I saw a question. Yeah, I'm going to come over to Corinne just a second. Just a quick answer here. So Lauren asked, do student members count? Yes, student members count towards your membership count.
On that note, I just want to, this is probably for the finance session, but since you're responsible of the overarching finance responsibilities, please, when you look at your budgets, do not budget your rebate dollars all on full price rebates.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
So I have most of my chapters, their membership numbers are up, but their rebate dollars are down because of people joining under promotions or a student membership. So take a look at that so you set yourselves up for success.
Corinne.
So 2 things I wanted to comment to Noreen. We actually have a past president's council. So it's just an idea for you, for your immediate past president. But my question, only because I'm multitasking and I didn't pay keen attention to the whole the whole thing around the chapter retreat, the board retreats, I wasn't clear on what the message there was. I
Yeah.
know if you've got one, keep doing it, but what was the idea before that?
Yeah, the change in minimums, again, minimums, is to have, you only are required to have one chapter annual retreat per year. Mid-year is optional.
Very
But
good. Thank you.
if you've already scheduled and booked that mid-year retreat this year, you should stick with it.
Well, and I am going to state my opinion is that I think to do the business you have to do as a chapter, having 2 retreats is advisable.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that.
I would agree.
I don't disagree with that at all. This is
But
again
it's not a requirement.
correct. And Brain and team, it's really, it's meant to help those chapters that financially are struggling to have a second retreat.
Got it. That's fair. Thank you.
Clint, go ahead.
Yeah, we are working on our policies, procedures, and our bylaws. We've always had them separate as far as our chapter and then not being the same as the global piece that we have from you guys. We're told we need to integrate them, or they were supposed to be integrated previously into one document. Is that, I'm just not sure exactly what they need to be because I'm trying to finalize it for what we have to hand in at the end of this year for June 1. What document do you need? Are they supposed to be together or amended together, or is this just, what does it look like?
Currently together, future state separate. So future state, they will be separated. So any of those changes that happen and in chapter bylaws and policies will be used as a appendix to them.
It'll make your lives a lot easier.
Yeah.
It sounds more complicated than it is, but making changes to bylaws and policies and procedures is a pain in the neck.
Yep.
You used another word. This will make that process much easier. So if you're in the middle, Clint, of working on those, I'd almost say pause
Yeah.
till July 1 when they send you, don't do it twice. Just wait for them to come out in July and then work on those.
All right, so we'll work with our account to make sure that that's what we can do, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Let's see. Noreen, your hand is still up. Are you good? Okay, no worries. No worries.
And Kate, I second your statement there. We understand that the cost savings of a facilitator not using one at mid-year. But Kate's right that it is very difficult if you've ever tried to be in the office of the president and facilitate your retreat. Things will get lost in there. You won't be able to document as much, and you don't have that unbiased third party. So I would just, before you decide not to go with your facilitator, I think have a conversation around negotiating fees. If they're doing 2 retreats for you, see if you can negotiate some sort of bundle or something that, we'd really hate to see. The facilitators would hate to see a lot of the chapters go away from using them because frankly, I believe we bring a lot to the table that helps you be successful.
Agreed.
Other questions? If not, I have questions I can ask you. Okay, but is there?
CRM in the works. Okay, so that's Robert. That's a good question. The answer is kind of. I know that is super vague in what you expect in knowing me, Robert. No, the reason I say kind of, yes, we are looking into a couple of different resources. We haven't nailed one down that makes sense yet, both from a financial perspective to MPI and to the chapters. We use a software called Aptify. It would not work at the chapter level. There's some others that we're looking at that could potentially work. So ultimately, yes, we just haven't found the right solution yet.
So let me ask you a question, because my chapters ask me this all the time, and there was a time where we were closer, I think, to getting it. And so I had advised my chapters to pause their search for them. But now, would you say, you know what, if you're interested in one, go ahead and do your own for now. And then when you catch up,
I would say so. I mean, we're we're a minimum of 12, 18 months out from having that type of solution ready.
Okay, there was one above
Oh,
Angie,
yeah,
so
so-
let's go.
Clint asked why the newsletter went to the CLRP and not so. Clint, because we get dinged for sending too many emails out. So we listened and we moved it just to the CLRP. If there is interest in having an email notification that goes out the second Thursday of every month, that's just a, hey guys, your CLN is up. We can start doing that, but we get dinged for sending out too many emails, A and B. Not to name any names, but there are many individuals who have opted out of MPI communication. So even when we would send that newsletter out, people wouldn't be getting it because they opted out. So
I love the idea though of a, like, not send the newsletter, just say, hey,
Sure.
don't forget to take a peek in the CLRP.
yeah,
So let,
okay. Let me tinker with that and think on it with the team. Let's see. Has the CVent purchase impacted? No. So yeah, CVent got purchased by, was it Salesforce? All of a sudden I'm blanking on this, for way more money than I will ever see collectively in my life. And good for Reggie. No, doesn't impact what we do at all. Everything has remained.
working on MPI related things. With a department, within Office of the President, whatever it is, there is just a certain number of hours I have to set aside each week to do this role. And I don't think that I was realizing that until I was officially in the presidency role.
yeah, absolutely. It is time consuming.
Very, yeah, I mean.
I see Debbie with her thumbs up.
I get it. I mean, look, obviously I'm not a chapter president, but I have sat on the board of a number of nonprofits, and it takes a lot of time, and you're right. You've really got to understand and set that time aside.
So you said, Clint, the slideshow had some amazing information that would have been helpful starting and planning my year. Yeah, you know, this year was a funny year, if I'm being honest. I mean, I had my first retreat on March 30th. So, I mean, we had several retreats without the global update. And it's to no fault of anybody's. I think it's hard to get retreat dates where everybody can go. I mean, most retreats, I'm not seeing 100% participation, which breaks my heart, but hopefully that'll get better. But everything is now available. It'll be in the chapter leader training section, the global updates there. The appendix of the global update is in there as well. And please, please, please have your departments take a look at it. The reason that the global update is now shortened to anywhere to 15 to 24 minutes, 24 minutes this year, is because they have the appendix. So there's important information that your chapter leaders need to read in that appendix. And then of course, all of the CLS recordings and slideshows will be put in the chapter leader training as well. You should scroll down. I feel like I missed something.
I have a point. This is Margie from New England. One of the things I would have loved to have understood is that it's a kind of an opportunity year to learn the parts of the chapter that you're not currently familiar with. I think for us, we have set roles and asks that we have of our PE. But in addition to that, if I had stopped and taken the time and just understood that, you know, you have the opportunity now to sort of learn, you know, if you're not familiar with marketing, sit in on a bunch of those calls. If you're not familiar with membership, or, you know, you haven't been involved with them knee deep, sit in on a bunch of those calls, like get your exposure and experience to the aspects of the chapter that you don't yet have. And then also all the other asks that you have in the second half of your year. That is something that I wish I knew and I had been communicating to our current PE, because the second half of the year is crazy.
It is tough because you're already shifting between nominations and transition and CLS and your retreat and WEC and whatever else. So everybody just take a deep breath and take one day at a time.
Yeah.
We have one last question we're going to take
From Christina
from Christina
in Ecuador.
in Ecuador.
Yes, thank you. Hello to everyone. I'm very happy to be in here and I hope to know you in person at the WEC. We are expecting that LATAM gets present there and we make business together. I'm concerned about three things. One, we are working on the bylaws for Ecuador, and I want to know if we have to one with global, for example, and another that is local for our laws here in Ecuador. The other question that I would love to know is about the benefits of some events that MPI has a partnership. For example, the IMEX, the IBTM World, and this kind of events. And the third is a suggestion about the manage of the toolkit, about the marketing toolkit and the brand image, because I have been working on some advertisement about WEC, and we put all the logos from LATAM together, and we find that some were bigger, some other were smaller. So I think we need an update so we can keep all the image like it has to be, you know. I understand Drew, his concern about this quality of the image of the MPI around the world. So that are my concerns. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, very good. Thanks, Christina. So for your bylaws and policies, that kind of goes back to how we're going to be treating this in having an appendix. So yes, you need to have it localized. The chapter bylaws and policies need to be localized and separate from the MPI global bylaws and policies. And within the chapter bylaws and policies, that's where you will have a standard form and the ability to put an appendix that's based on your local country, region, county, what have you, state for each chapter. The second was our partner events. So at events like IMEX, IBTM, we can always work together to have like chapter meetups and that sort of thing. We always put out our schedule for events that we might be doing on site and education. There's not as much of an opportunity to partner within our booth, but there is to, try and work with us on potential meetups, because frankly, that's another sponsorship opportunity. And then for the marketing toolkits, so I get your thought there. Maybe what we can do is try and highlight some of the changes that are taking place in those toolkits so that what's most recent. Maybe there's a message within the CLRP for that chapter leader newsletter that really highlights, hey, this is new and this has changed. So I get that.
Just because in the changing of the marketing leader, everyone wants to put their own sal pimienta,
Yep.
like pepper and salt, and that destroys the brand. And I understand, I am very firm about that. And I don't think we don't need also a really strict way of working, like ask for permission or to validation of our advertising. So to flow, it will be better if we make this training to update the brand manage. Thank you.
And with that, we have to conclude our session. Kate gave you her email. You probably know how to find Drew. You could just email Kate. She'll tell you how to find me. But with that, we want to thank you. You should all be heading to your regional breakouts. If you're in the Midwest, I'll see you there. And I think that's it.
Yep, we've got about 20-25 minute break here. DJ Brad is going to start playing some music here in just a bit. So thank you all.
Thanks,
for all
Kate.
You do. Yes, thank you, Kate. And have a good rest of your CLS. Thanks, guys. Bye, y'all.
Bye.